The Morning Sports Desk, available on demand on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and WadenaRadio.com.
Hello and welcome to the Morning Sports Desk. I'm CJ. There's Corey and Zeke joining us on the Morning Sports Desk today. We got a full house in to talk a lot of Cooperstown because Zeke got back a very late Monday night, early Tuesday morning. What was that timeline looking for you on your drive back?
Well, we drove through the night. We were going to stay in Cleveland, and we got there. We're like, we're only going to be able to sleep for like 4 or 5 hours anyway. Let's just keep plugging through. So we left after they hung Joe's plaque up in the plaque gallery. It was 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, and I think I pulled into my driveway at like 4 o'clock the next afternoon. So it was a haul.
Yeah, I'd say so.
We made it.
How much sleep did you get in the car? As much as you could, or did you were you like red-eyeing the whole way?
I red-eyed the whole way. So I stayed up with the guy who took the overnight shift. He took the midnight to 4 shift. So I stayed up with him, and I was loaded on caffeine, Mountain Dew, Code Red. We passed like 3 Dunkin' Donuts coffees on the way through. So I was ready to go. So I took the 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. shift, would put us through Chicago during rush hour. And I was wired. I was kind of starting to feel the wire started to wear off. And so I drove to the Dells and then moved out of my seat and then just couldn't sleep. And so I got home. I think I laid down on the couch at like 5 o'clock, and I didn't get up until 7:30 the next morning. So I was very well rested.
What is the Zeke game of choice when you're trying to distract that driver in a good way, trying to keep that driver awake on the highway? Is it the ABC game? You playing the license plate game? You spotting cows? Like, what are you doing?
2 different games. We have a road trip game called My Cows, where if you're driving on the road and you see a herd, almost a flock of cows, a herd of cows, you say my cows, and then those cows are all yours, and you claim them. And everyone can take as many cows from as many different fields as they want. But if you drive it by a church, you can say marry my cows, and then your number of cows doubles. And if you pass the graveyard, you can say bury your cows, and then you choose one person to lose all of their cows, and it gets a little intense at times. And when we get angry at each other for doing that, we have a whole bunch of trivia books and stuff that we brought along too. So we'll just do random trivia questions and something to keep the mind alert.
Sure. Any trivia questions that you got that you're like a little feather in your cap?
Probably. I don't remember, to be honest. That whole 19 hours is a blur.
He still has Code Red coursing through his veins right now.
Exactly. Yeah. There was some like 1800s literature thing. I got one right, and it was just a shot in the dark, and I felt pretty good about that one. The answer was 1963, I think, but I don't remember what the question was.
Well, that's okay. That
was the random number I threw out into the universe, and it was the correct answer.
Well, again, you went to Cooperstown, New York, and you got to be there, like you talked about, for Joe Mauer's Hall of Fame induction ceremony. You got to see the plaque put up. But just kind of describe from the moment you got there. We talked with you last week, right when you got there, and you were still kind of exploring the space. But what were some of the highlights of your weekend?
I'd say the number one thing is just the camaraderie with other Twins fans that were there. There was thousands of fans. I haven't seen an exact number on how many were there. I know for Tony and Jim 2 years ago, there were 35,000 people in Cooperstown, and I would say there were even more out there for Joe Mauer this last weekend. And just I talked to Joe on Saturday. He said just the overwhelming number of Twins jerseys and number 7s walking around. It was great. I was on the 3rd level of the museum on Saturday afternoon, I think. They have a section up there called Sacred Ground, which is kind of an homage and a learning opportunity for old baseball stadiums, dating back to the mid-1800s and through today. And they had some stuff from the Met there. They had a brick from the foundation. They had a directional sign telling fans where to go for each section. And then near the end of it, they had one of the baseball bat handled shovels they used to break ground on Target Field. And there was nothing on the Metrodome, though. There's just nothing. Like they erased it from existence. And so I got into a very lively discussion with some Twins fans about this, about how the Twins try and forget about that 1981 through 2009 era where they played basically in a garbage bag, But when one fan kept saying, 2 world championships, 87, 91, you have to give credit to that. And as good as the Metrodome was, it was a garbage stadium. And if it wouldn't have been for those 2 World Series championships, which I don't think happened without the friendly confines of the Metrodome, the white Teflon service and the super bouncy ground. So I guess there's a little bit to be said there. But a lot of Twins fans have a lot of Metrodome conversations in the Sacred Grounds area. And I think the other thing too is just walking around and exploring and seeing who's there. We walked past Thad Levine on the street the first day. We ran into Dick Bramer randomly in the museum. He had just gotten in. He flew into Hartford, Connecticut, had a couple delays with the massive plane outage, and that affected things a little bit over the weekend too. Talked to Dick Bramer, and he was talking to every Twins fan he could find in that place. He made a lot of fans' afternoons as they're walking through the museum, and you hear that deep booming voice from down the hall, and you know exactly who it is. And so he's taking pictures and having conversations and letting people know how he's doing. So that was cool. I talked to Dave St. Peter after the Hall of Fame parade a little bit on Saturday. So it's just a weird hodgepodge, if you want to call it that, of fans and execs and radio guys and just everybody enjoying the weekend together.
Awesome.
Any surprises of people you ran into? Like, oh my gosh, I got to see that famous name, even if they were dipping into a cafe somewhere.
I heard that Trevor Hoffman was walking around with very little security. I didn't see him in the Village. I saw him at the Hall of Fame parade. I'm actually going for my Trevor Hoffman hairstyle. He's just got straight slick back. So I haven't told my wife I'm doing that yet, but Trevor Hoffman was signing some autographs for people. I know Denny McClain is a Hall of Fame staple there. He's not in the Hall of Fame. He won 30 games for the Tigers back in 1968. One of the most impressive 3-year runs in baseball. He was signing parking lot autographs. Pete Rose was in town over the weekend. He was signing some stuff, kind of as a hey, look at me, I'm Pete Rose, and I'm not in the Hall of Fame yet, kind of thing. So, yeah, just wherever you went, there was dudes everywhere.
Cool,
crazy, and you get to talk with some of these guys. Does it hit you that like, whoa, I'm in Cooperstown and I'm talking to all these guys celebrating Joe Mauer's Hall of Fame retirement? Did any of that kind of hit you, or was it like a blur from the moment you got there to the moment you left?
I try to take in as much as I can, and Joe talked a bit about this during his media availability on Saturday as well. Is one of the pieces of advice that Johnny Bench gave him, and Johnny does this with every new Hall of Famer. When everyone's at the Otsego Hotel, I think is what it's called, on the lake, and he calls the new Hall of Famers up to the third level. Meet me up in the third level, 5 minutes. And they're like, okay, is it some kind of hazing ritual or something like that? And what Johnny Bench does is he sits everyone down in the rocking chairs overlooking the lake. And he says, okay, you guys stay in here for 20 minutes and you just sit here and reflect on what's happening. And he leaves. And he makes sure that they have time to just sit there and acknowledge what's going on and take a couple moments to themselves, because schedules are so busy. There was the golf tournament on Saturday. It was Joe and Justin Morneau in a cart, paired with Glenn Perkins and Nick Punto, who walked off the plane basically and shot a 70 on Saturday morning. So they have that going on. All the press stuff, trying to get ready for the Hall of Fame dinner, which takes place in the Platt Gallery on Saturday, and the parade, and of course getting your speech ready. And just there's so much going on. It's kind of like your wedding day, where it happened. You remember bits and pieces, but you don't really take the time to enjoy it. And Johnny Bench makes sure, he's been the guy that's done this since he got in 1989, you take some time to sit and reflect and enjoy this moment, because it goes so fast. And as busy as I was, I'm sure it was 10 times worse for Joe and Jim and Todd and Adrian over the weekend.
So when we chatted with Dick Bramer on the morning sports desk, we asked him, what's the thing you got to do when you're out there? You've been out there twice now. Mm-hmm. For a fan who's going to make a future trip that direction, what's the thing in Cooperstown they got to do, whether they're there for Hall of Fame a weekend or otherwise just to see it?
I would say one of the cool things that we did is we tried to find all the Minnesota Twins items in the Hall of Fame. There's a kind of a guest kiosk at the beginning where it has a piece of paper for each MLB team and says, here's the starting lineup. Here's 9 things that you should go look for in the Hall of Fame. And it's like the Gene Larkin ball from '81. That's in the Hall of Fame. They had Johan Santana's jersey, or one of his jerseys from the 06 season when he won the Triple Crown and the Cy Young. They have a Harmon Killebrew bat. They've got the brick from the Metrodome from Met Stadium that I talked about before. And so it's just kind of going through and finding all these different things. I would also suggest looking at Washington Senators stuff. There's not a lot of it in there because the Senators, well, the saying was first in war, first in peace, last in the American League, because the Senators sucked except for 24, 25, and 30, 34, I think, where they won pennants and the World Series in 24. I mean, there's a lot of East Coast baseball history out there, Red Sox, Yankees, all this stuff, and very little on the Senators. And so kind of learning the history of the Twins before they came to Minnesota. I'm a huge history guy. And so I love learning about the history of baseball and things like that. But if you're looking for just things to do outside of the museum, there's a lot of gift shops, a lot of memorabilia stores, things like that for souvenirs. Food is incredible. Sal's Pizza right on Main Street. I think we ate there 3 times. Just New York style pizza. They have a lasagna pizza with meatballs and ricotta cheese on it. I got that twice. Yep. Just classic mushroom and pepperoni. We had a lot of debates in the car because we ate at Lou Malnati's in Chicago on the way out there, Chicago deep dish. And then we had the New York style pizza. And I've always been a Chicago deep dish kind of guy, but I think Sal's in New York kind of moved the dot a little bit. I still love that stuffed Chicago sausage pizza, but that big giant New York slice folded in half, that's a close second for me now.
All right. And where are you on Detroit style deep dish pizza?
We didn't make it to Detroit. We thought about going to Detroit. We went to Gary, Indiana instead, which is basically,
which is worse.
We golfed in Gary. Yeah, it was not great golfing in Gary, Indiana. I won't say the name of the golf course, but it was not fantastic. But I like the Detroit as well. The buttered thick crust. Yeah.
The closest thing I've came to Detroit style pizza is Little Caesars. So I'm
Caesars. Yeah, Jets in the cities is similar. Yeah.
Isn't Detroit style just a shape?
Basically, yeah. It's a square.
You ever seen the Family Guy bit where it's Peter's talking with an out-of-towner, and it's like it's supposed to be a New York style guy, and he's just eating pizza, and he just looks at him, he's like, "You called his pizza?" He's like, "We do here, yes." We do. That's exactly what it is. So anyway, great recommendations, because Hall of Fame trip is like a bucket list item for my life, and now. Obviously we all have kids, like we all want to take them out there. Like that's bucket list item, right? Agreed. Like that's something you got to put on there if you're a baseball fan, Zeke.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Whether it's Hall of Fame induction weekend or not, I wouldn't recommend next year's Hall of Fame induction because Ichiro is going to get in. If he doesn't get 100% of the vote, what are we even doing? But the Japanese media is going to take over Cooperstown. The Dominicans were there for Adrian. They were there 2 years for David Ortiz, and they love their homegrown guys. And they pretty much invaded Cooperstown as well for the weekend, as they should have. But man, once Ichiro gets in, it is going to be jam packed. My guess, the record for most people at a Hall of Fame weekend was 55,000. That was for Cal Ripken Jr. and Tony Gwynn. I forget what year that was, but Ichiro, I'd say they easily double it. I think over 100K.
Cool. Is there anybody else notable on next year's ballot?
Yeah, it's Ichiro, it's CC Sabathia, it's Dustin Pedroia, it's Troy Tulowitzki, and there was somebody else that was on the first time ballot that has a decent chance to get in.
Carlos Gomez is on the ballot next year.
He probably is. I think Francisco Liriano's on the ballot next year already. Yeah, which makes me feel old. Yeah, which is. Yeah, and that's the era we're in. Plus, you have guys like Andrew Jones. I think it's his last year on the ballot. Billy Wagner's last year on the ballot, and some of the guys, the holdover guys from last year. So if I were to guess, I'd say it's Billy Wagner and Ichiro, maybe, or the two guys that go in next year. Sabathia will get in eventually. Pedroia, I don't know if he had a sustainable enough numbers. Tulowitzki didn't. So and the debate starts now. I mean, it's Ichiro and who else? Because Ichiro definitely he should be the second unanimous Hall of Famer ever, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I would put those first two guys in.
Mm-hmm. There's always going to be somebody though. I think didn't like Lavelle of the Star Tribune, Lavelle Neal, didn't he like not vote?
Yeah, he did.
Like who was
Derek Jeter did not get unanimous in the Hall of Fame because Lavelle Neal didn't vote for him.
There's always one writer, and whether it's him or someone, there's always one writer that wants to be the guy's like, well, I mean, when you think about it.
Yeah.
And because that's a lot of power to be able to hold that over somebody.
Exactly, yeah. And Mariano got it the next year, which was fun.
Yeah. The last, I was going to say, he was there, I think, unanimous Hall of Famer. Was Ken Griffey Jr.? He was unanimous, wasn't he? Was he not?
No, Mo was the only one. No.
Okay, yeah, all right. So, yeah, fascinating. All right, Zeke, any other Cooperstown things you want to get off your chest before we switch topics here?
I talked about Dick Bramer. I talked about the food.
How about this?
With the crowds.
I'll throw something at you.
Okay.
We're all Twins fans here, but we all have guys that we just liked.
Yeah.
Who aren't Twins. Like Ken Griffey was always one for me. Like, how could you not like Ken Griffey Jr.? You've been there before, so maybe you'd check this off the list. But who are some of the other guys for you that were like, they're not Twins, but I just need to go see something. I need to go see Griffey. I need to go see fill in the blank.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Griffey actually wasn't able to make it. I talked about this before with the flight and internet situation. Pedro Martinez didn't make it there. He got stuck in Atlanta. I know they're still having issues. Ken Griffey Jr. didn't make it this year. Jeter got delayed. He was only there for the Hall of Fame induction ceremony on Sunday. But you talk about guys. I mean, Chipper Jones is one of those guys, and he looks like he could still go out and bat 300. Chipper Jones was one of my favorites. Just kind of one of those starstruck moments when you see him in Cooperstown. Mariano Rivera, of course, as much as Twins fans disliked Mariano in the mid 2000s in that Yankees playoff run against the Twins. Who else? Robin Yount is another guy. Yeah, just a lot of them because it's our era now. Randy Johnson wasn't there this weekend. He's probably taking pictures somewhere, but yeah, it's anybody from who's got in since like 2017 through now. Those are the guys that I grew up watching in that era, and now they're in the Hall of Fame. You can walk through and see their plaque. Pudge Rodriguez, another one. Yeah, so just a lot of guys. Yeah.
Anytime you go to the Hall of Fame, Corey, I want you to go find Juan Uribe, okay?
That guy, he'll never make it.
Immaculate grid legend. You want Juan Uribe?
If I have any say in this at all, Juan Uribe will never even visit the Hall of Fame.
I did not see any Juan Uribe merchandise on the sidewalk sales.
Unless they want to put for ugliest beard of all, ugliest time, and then maybe they could put it in there.
Hey, Harold Baines got in and lowered the bar for everybody. So I think he has a career WAR of like 38 or something like that. So if Harold Baines can do it, Juan Uribe can do it too.
Ish.
He's just mentally preparing you. He's setting the ground.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So let's switch gears here. And I want to talk a little bit here about let's swing back locally here to Perham, because I see here according to the Perham Focus, there is going to be a dedication, Howie Kangas Field at the Perham Little League Field 1 at Arvig Park. They're kind of talking about some of that stuff. And Corey, I know you got to talk to him a little bit while Howie was around. Perham and Wadena Deer Creek coach. What was that? What was he like? And just kind of that seeing that dedication and stuff like that.
Well, he was a great guy, and like old rough and tumble football coach guy. So, when he took over at Wadena Deer Creek, I didn't know any of his time in Perham. I was not here for that. So I missed that section of his career. But when he took the job at Wadena Deer Creek, there was just this like, oh my gosh, that's the guy. I can't believe it. And then over time, you get a chance to pregame interview with him and talk with him otherwise if you see him out and about. After he fully retired, he just lived like right around the corner from me. So we'd go out for walks with our boys, and it was funny because just every summer he's like, geez, they're that big now. But here's the thing about Howie. There's two things that stood out to me. One was he everything you ever heard from people who worked with him was just how much the kids really loved him. every story was just always like, he had his quirks as a football coach, and I'll get to that in point number 2. But like, players loved playing for Howie. If he was their teacher and he was in gym class or whatever, like there was just something about him that attracted kids to him. It was just really well liked, and that was every story that I always heard about him. Now, as a football coach, it was always fun. He had the aura of like, I'm not intimidated by anybody, but I also don't like to bother anyone. And he had the aura of, I don't want to be bothered. And then you would get him and he would talk for days. So like he was so good at answering questions. But the quirk was always, as we know with Howie, he loved smoking cigarettes as much as he loved coaching football. And the rules at high school football fields are you cannot be on the grounds to smoke your cigarette. So the reason why I started recording interviews earlier in the day or earlier in the week for my football games was because Howie needed to get one last heater in before kickoff and would show up like 10 minutes before kickoff. I was like, I got a pregame show that needed to start 5 minutes ago, and I'm trying to track Howie down to get an interview, and he's just like, yeah, you know how it is. I just had to get one more in. But Corey, I tell you what, we're gonna try to hit some home runs today, and it's not gonna be it's not gonna be about quality of drive or quantity of drives. It's gonna be, can we get that 60-yarder for a score? And like, yeah, we're gonna give it all we got. So I loved Howie, and like I said, after he retired and moved to town, he just lived right around the corner, and I ran into Howie quite a bit out on family walks or whatever. He'd be out riding his bicycle through town or whatever it was, and just a great guy. So that he's getting this honor in Perham is it's pretty beautiful.
Yeah, and really, really cool to see. I really like it when local fields name, when they get that name recognition. It's just really cool. Adds like a historic element. I like it for, this is a very minor thing. I like it for broadcasting games when you can say from a certain field instead of just the, if I was at my high school, from the Bertha Hewitt Gymnasium, I get a court on there from the Bertha Hewitt football field. Get something on there.
Mm-hmm.
A little, like Verndale's got Mainland Field. It's just a little bit more legitimacy that only matters to me. But I feel like it makes my calls sound better. And then it adds a little bit of history to the field. And I think that's really, really cool. So moving on now to our state sports again, Vikings training camp is off with a bang. I don't know if you guys saw the big news yesterday, but Christian Darrisaw has signed a new contract. Vikings and offensive tackle Christian Darrisaw, according to Adam Schefter, have agreed on a 4-year deal worth up to $113 million in new money, including $77 million guaranteed.
New money? That's weird.
We ain't got a lot of new money. We got a lot of old money, though.
New money. He's not one of them old money guys. What is he, a Vanderbilt?
No, he's a Rockefeller, I heard. So that's not good for him. Darrisaw had 2 years left on his rookie contract. The deal includes $43.7 million guaranteed at signing. Deal negotiated by Drew Rosenhaus and whatever. I think the new money is basically saying that this is not in addition to his rookie contract.
Right.
Because I think basically he has this season, and then, if I understand it correctly, the new contract kicks in. The Vikings tried to do this a season ago with Justin Jefferson and try and get him signed before his 5th year, because he still is this year and next year under contract. But the thing about it is they're only going to get more expensive as they get going. And the Vikings right now giving Christian Darrisaw, I think, per year, the most for any left tackle in the NFL, beating out Laramie Tunsil's contract with, I believe, Houston. So, you have good points all around. Christian Darrisaw, they offer you $113 million in new money, and you say, I'm an old money guy, but $113 million in new money sounds pretty good too.
There's a lot of players for a lot of teams that should be wearing their team's colors for their entire career. And Christian Darrisaw is probably that guy. Wide receivers move around. Quarterbacks are the only other guys you really like. I think of all those bad Cleveland Browns teams and the 49 quarterbacks they had, but Joe Thomas was the left tackle for all of them. Left tackles are I just there's nothing bad I can say about this. Like, Christian Darrisaw needs to be the left tackle until my oldest son graduates from high school.
It's a long time, Corey. Is he going to last that long?
It's not that long.
It goes quick. Yeah, I love this deal. Anytime a left tackle hits the free agency market, it's like either the team didn't have the cap space to sign him, and it's a very rare occurrence, or it was a failed experiment with that guy. And to get Darrisaw locked up, and if you want to go back and talk Kirk Cousins situation, if the Vikings re-sign Kirk Cousins, Darrisaw is likely one of the guys that has to walk because they can't afford. And so to have him get this deal done at this point and just have it over and done with and signed, and we're moving on to other things is a huge boost for the Vikings going into the next season.
I mean, it's just big. Like you talk about, Corey, there's just certain guys that you don't let leave. It's what position of players are franchise tagged most, or were before salary caps got exorbitant. But it was like quarterback and left tackle. If you couldn't figure out what to do with that all-world left tackle, and he's like, I'm hitting free agency, you're like, the heck you are. We're franchise tagging you. You're not leaving. And that's, I mean, it didn't have to get that way with the Vikings, but it's fascinating that for Rick Spielman tried to draft offensive linemen for years and years and years and whiffed and whiffed and whiffed, whether it was Matt Khalil or Pat Elflein or Drew Samia or whatever the name was, like just whiffed. And then all of a sudden drafts Christian Darrisaw, the franchise bookend left tackle that he'd been trying to draft basically since becoming the GM of the Vikings. And then within 12 months of that draft pick, he's fired. It's just funny.
Bummer, dude. If you believe in JJ McCarthy at all, this Christian Darrisaw extension is the most important thing you can do for him, other than, teach that guy how to play quarterback. But like, you can't have JJ McCarthy dying a slow death every single week because he has no time in the pocket to execute what he needs to execute. Like, having Darrisaw around for the growth of JJ McCarthy is the on-field probably most important thing. The other most important thing is Jefferson, because you can just have a guy who you can throw to and have a bailout. So to have those sorts of things, those stalwarts for what this offense needs to be, for JJ in the long term is really huge. Also, if I may, just really quickly, I can't believe I'm doing this. I do have to defend Matt Khalil just for a moment, because they drafted him to be a run blocking left tackle. Because I don't know if you remember who their running back at the time was, Adrian Peterson, who's pretty good, and he was a masher. Khalil was a masher of a run blocking left tackle, and then the second they had to start throwing more, he was whatever the opposite of that is. More mashed potatoes, maybe. So I want to give Matt Khalil a little credit for being really good for what that team needed until it wasn't what they needed anymore.
We'll always have Matt Khalil's rookie season.
Yeah. Yes. Do you guys want some year by year starting left tackles for the Vikings? I had the list here.
Please.
Yes, I do.
It's been Darrisaw for the last 3 years. Before that, Riley Reif was in that spot.
Great Barry Reif.
Riley Reif, TJ the Turnstile Clemmings, as I called him, in 2016.
Oof.
Then you had Matt Khalil. Charlie Johnson was there. And then you're getting into Brian McKinney, who was a solid. He was there for a good 8 years, yeah. Then Brad Badger in 2001.
Didn't remember that. That's the first time I've heard that name ever.
You had the Todd Stussy years. Todd Stussy always good for at least 3 false starts a game.
Yep.
Everett Lindsay, and then you're into Gary Zimmerman in the early 90s. So it maybe not as bad as I thought, but it just seems like there's always a handful of guys that the Vikings draft that you think are going to be good and move into that left tackle spot, and they just kind of fizzle out. They move around the line a little bit, and then they're gone.
They have the structural integrity of a wet cardboard box. Yeah,
yes.
Not ideal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's never good when when you draft a left tackle and then you hear him be like, well, he's more of a right guard, but
he can play. He played left tackle in college, and he can.
The second they start talking about how the left tackle could move over to center or right tackle, you're like, no.
Oh, here we go again.
Yeah, not great. It's the thing with Christian Darrisaw too is Rick Spielman drafted him late, and he got off to a rough start in his career because he didn't play the first few games, and it wasn't typical Mike Zimmer, the rookie's got to prove it kind of deal. He was hurt. He had off-season surgery, and it just took him a while. Like, he was brought along slowly because of that. But and everybody's like, all right, left tackle. It's not a sexy draft pick, but it's needed. But everybody is on bated breath, as Zeke mentioned with some of those guys that have been before him. It wasn't like nobody had like big confidence that he was going to be all worldly. But the moment they put him in, and then after a few games, everybody kind of looked around and went, do the Vikings have like a franchise left tackle? And the next couple seasons, it's proven yes. And the fact that you have him, and also credit to Rick Spielman, Brian O'Neill, who was a developmental guy, who was a tight end in college or in high school, early college, and became an offensive tackle late and kind of grew into the position, literally. You have a franchise that has two bookend tackles, Justin Jefferson locked up long-term, both your tackles locked up long-term, TJ Hawkinson locked up long-term, and you have been now investing in some pieces in the defense. But offensive specifically, you have, and I kind of forget the Vikings have Aaron Jones now. It's given them such a good infrastructure for Sam Darnold, but also for JJ McCarthy to succeed. And it's fascinating that a rookie quarterback is going to get a very nice car to drive in right away.
I think Warren Sharp had a list of best offensive lines, and I think he had the Vikings 10th.
Interesting.
He was better than any of us would have guessed, right?
It's like when every team for the Twins, it's like, what do you rank the Twins bullpen as? So like last, they're awful. And then you're like, they're like maybe 11th. Not like awful. They're like actually not horrible, but offensive lines are the same way in football.
Yep.
I was listening to Dan Patrick this morning. He's talking about Tua Tagovailoa and his desire to get a new deal signed this offseason, where he's asking like $55 million. And basically the argument was, well, if you take Tua and put him in any other offense away from the two fastest receivers in the NFL, in Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, how much is Tua going to be worth? But then you put J.J. McCarthy or Sam Darnold in what the Vikings have right now. And it's a dream position for any quarterback to be in, because like you mentioned, you have those solid tackles, bookending your side. You added Aaron Jones in the backfield. You have JJ, you have Jordan Addison, you have TJ Hawkinson, and you're in a position to succeed now. And I think a lot of people, with all the JJ McCarthy talk, a lot of people sleeping on Sam Darnold, because you want to talk about rough starts to a career. I mean, the guy had Adam Gase as a head coach to start his career. You're talking about the worst NFL head coaches in the last 15 years. And I think Sam Darnold has two guys that are going to be at the top of that list. Goes to San Francisco, beats out Trey Lance, who the Niners just spent a third overall pick on Trey Lance. And Sam Darnold, the washed up draft bust, comes in and beats him out for the backup spot behind Brock Purdy. And now that guy who had a year to just get his feet underneath him in San Francisco in that Kyle Shanahan offense, and now he comes here. I mean, it's likely going to be a rough season for the Vikings, don't get me wrong. But with Sam Darnold back there, I don't think it's going to be quite as rough as it could have been if you would have brought somebody else in to quarterback this team while J.J. McCarthy waits in the wings.
I'm glad you brought this up, Zeke, because that leads into my next question here, and we'll kind of wrap up the sports desk on this. Training camp, the first full team practice is today. Everybody checked in yesterday, all good, and obviously the first practice doesn't really mean much. Everybody's in shorts for a long time, and especially in the Kevin O'Connell era, training camp early on is a lot of guys in shorts just kind of picking things up and getting back into the swing of things. But, how are we feeling about J.J. McCarthy, Sam Darnold? Let's start with Sam Darnold first, Zeke, since you already gave your piece. Corey, what is the vibe on Sam Darnold? Zeke feels confident. How confident are we in Sam Darnold? And we had the whole offseason to talk about it until theoretically, and there was an offseason program, but now they're getting ready to play actual games. How confident are we in Sam Darnold?
Well, Sam Darnold has in his career been a punchline. He is better than a punchline.
He's better than a mononucleosis punchline.
Yeah. he's better than a punchline. So from like some of those national talking points on Sam Darnold, he's clearly a better he's better than that. I always temper because that's just how my personality is. He's probably not walking on water for the Vikings team. Because, and the reason I say that, I don't mean that harshly, but like the great quarterbacks overcome weird stuff, right? I mean, that's just what it is. And Sam Darnold has had a lot of weird stuff thrown his way, and he hasn't really overcome any of it. So the point is he's somewhere in the middle. I don't know that he's better than the punchline of oh, woe is me, Sam Darnold, or oh, woe is the team that has Sam Darnold. But he is also not really come over some of those tough adversities, and the great ones do. Not everybody can be great. That's an unfair thing to say. So it's going to be fascinating because I do feel like this is a year where we finally get to see the best glimpse of who Sam Darnold really is. It might be too late for him. It might be too late for his career. But whatever the best version of Sam Darnold that still exists, I think we have a chance to see that with this Vikings team because of Darrisaw, because of JJ. There's some things working against him, like his wide receivers can't seem to. That wide receiver room is really a mess. The Vikings have the 5th hardest schedule in 2024. That's not good. That's from Warren Sharp. That's working against him. He's brand new into a pretty high level thinking man's offense that probably takes longer than a season to feel completely comfortable in. So I don't know, is waffling in the middle, is that a fine answer for a conversation like this?
Let me put it to you this way. What do you out of the percentile outcomes of Sam Darnold, 90th percentile is leading this team on a deep playoff run. 10th percentile is like getting benched by week 3. What does the 50th percentile look like to you?
He starts the whole season and they are an 8 seed.
Yeah, I think it's fair.
Just miss. They're somewhere between, like,
you're always in the hunt up until the week 17. Like your logo's in the graphic.
You have last year?
They had 7.
Yeah, can they have 7 to 9 wins and be in the mix?
Yeah, I don't see why not. Outside of the hardest schedule, but I mean, that can always change on a dime. Not that it's not important, but.
And I would also like to add on to that. You mentioned getting benched in week 3. If he's getting benched because JJ is ready, then I will not begrudge Darnold anything.
Yeah, I guess maybe to clarify, be benched because it's like, oh my gosh, right.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But
yeah.
But the other thing also exists, right? It could be that McCarthy just is like. I always use the Russell Wilson in Seattle. They went way out of their way to get Matt Flynn, and then Russell, the love muscle Wilson, shows up and says, "This is mine," and he earned it completely and entirely. If that happens to be the case here, then this entire conversation is futile.
Well,
for me, I think the big thing is not to overreact about a bad record to start. If he is playing well, but you look at the first handful of opponents at the Giants, then you home opener against the Niners, the Texans, at the Packers, the Jets, and then the bye. That's your first handful of games. Then Detroit, Los Angeles, Indy, Jacksonville, Tennessee. It's going to be rough. But if he's keeping the Vikings in games and he's putting up good numbers, he's not throwing 6 picks a game like Nick Mullins was at the end there. Then I think you stick with Darnold and keep JJ on the bench potentially for the whole year, because you look at some of the guys that have done that. Patrick Mahomes was one of them. Aaron Rodgers, another one. Jordan Love, who's holding out of training camp because he wants to be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, which is tough to see for Packers fans. Then you keep JJ on the bench and let Darnold take those lumps and just let JJ sit back and watch, no matter how bad it gets. and see where you go from there. Because if you're throwing JJ McCarthy out there for his first NFL start in week 4 at Green Bay, maybe he surprises you, but odds are he doesn't, because Green Bay is going to be a good team this year, whether we want to say it or not.
Right, exactly. And yeah, I think I go back and forth with this on Darnold, because I was really high on Sam Darnold coming out of the draft in 2018. I thought he was the best quarterback out of that draft in a loaded draft class where there was guys like Baker Mayfield and Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. Obviously, that didn't turn out to be the case, but he was better than Josh Rosen. So we'll hang his hat on that. But the thing with Sam Darnold is, like you talked about, he got a raw deal in New York, but also the one thing that's holding me back a little bit, because the pro Sam Darnold is like, he got a raw deal even in Carolina, but if you look at like the last 10 games in Carolina, he was like 6-4 and he had some pretty good stats. I think the thing with Sam Darnold that's going to make or break him, Corey, you mentioned it's a complicated offense that Kevin O'Connell runs. And, I don't know if it's because Sam Darnold didn't have the weapons and felt like he needed to do all of it himself. But whether he was in New York or at USC in college, he's a bit of a gunslinger. He's a bit of a not younger Nick Mullins, because then Nick Mullins went to Southern Mississippi like Brett Favre, so he's just going to sling it all around the field. But Sam Darnold is a guy who's going to try and fit it in there. And, there are just some times in New York or Carolina where he just kind of force passes. And that, I think, will be Sam Darnold's downfall is, when things go sideways, is he going to, make a bad play? Is he going to make a turnover-worthy play and sink a game? And that'll be – Sam Darnold has the arm talent. He generally, I think, has the brain to pick up an NFL offense. Like, I think he's got –
Warhead's big enough.
yeah.
Sorry, Sam. That was not
just
catching strays from Corey Tackman on a Wednesday morning.
So, I mean, like, I think the thing that undoes Nick Mullins, I think the thing that undoes Sam Darnold will be the fact that he'll just throw too many interceptions. He'll try and force the ball. A defense will throw a coverage in there that he's not ready for, or that maybe he hasn't seen yet, and he misreads it, throws an interception, that kind of thing. I think that's the detraction to Sam Darnold, and that's why he won't succeed. But I'm cautiously optimistic. I think it's somewhere, like you said, Corey, in that 50th percentile, where I think that this is the safest answer ever. I think that they do kind of stay somewhere in that 7-9 win range, and I don't think they make the playoffs, but I think they're in the hunt. Like a season ago, I think the Vikings logo stays in the hunt category all the way until the final weekend of the season. And maybe JJ McCarthy's ready, maybe he's not. Final question for everybody. How are we feeling about JJ McCarthy going into training camp? It was a pretty, there were no reports coming out of OTAs that he was wowing everybody. There were some, ups and downs is kind of the big thing. Some good, some bad. But it was never like this guy, like Russell Wilson, where that guy walked in and everyone was like, whoa, this guy looks like a starting quarterback. Like, what does JJ McCarthy need to do over the course of training camp for you to go, all right, I think that guy can play?
Nothing. I'm serious. I think the Vikings are the PR machine right now is doing its best magic with JJ McCarthy, in that there's news about him, but every little bit of news is not newsworthy. They are doing everything they can to temper the expectations of who JJ McCarthy could be. And I believe they're right to do so. Best case scenario, can Sam Darnold lead the Vikings to be in the mix? Yeah, absolutely. But could this team only win 4 games this year? Absolutely. And it is going to be really, really, really important to let this team only win 4 games and not call for the head of Sam Darnold and KOC and Kwesi and just put people on pitchforks, heads on pitchforks and light torches, and do anything they can to get JJ in the mix. I have no issue with that guy not seeing a single important minute of playing time during the season, unless, of course, he has in fact earned it.
Yeah, I agree. When the 2 biggest news cycles with your first round quarterback are he signs his deal and he's throwing passes to Adam Thielen at an unknown location, I think that's a pretty good offseason for JJ McCarthy, because he's not being billed as, the next big thing to come to Minnesota. There have been so many other headlines surrounding this team that haven't been starting quarterback, some good, some bad. I think that's been good for JJ McCarthy, because my expectations are tempered. There was hot guys on McCarthy coming into the draft. There were cold guys on McCarthy. Some wanted him, some didn't. And now you're getting kind of both sides of that. But for the most part, we haven't been seeing those huge throws. The third news cycle, he was practicing jump passes at camp the other day, the old Brett Favre jump pass. And that's fine. Let him have fun. He's a 20, 21-year-old kid. Don't put too many expectations on him, because if you want this guy to be under center for the next 10, 15 years, let him slowly ease his way in. Because like you said, Corey, it is a very difficult offense to learn. And if Sam Darnold, who is the expert at learning new offenses, I think he had a different offensive coordinator, head coach for like the first handful of years in the league, and then he has to go play for Matt Rule and then moving all over the place. If Sam Darnold's going to have issues with that, JJ McCarthy as a rookie is going to have issues with that as well. Let him sit back, let him learn the playbook, let him learn what it's like to be a professional football player with this team. He's going to be the face of the franchise. Just let him soak it all in. The Johnny Bench thing, take 20 minutes in a rocking chair, soak everything in, sit on the bench, and we'll see where it goes in 2025.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is just going to be command of the offense, right? Like, it's not going to necessarily be that he's in a preseason game and he's throwing touchdowns, because I think we learn preseason games can be a mirage. Sometimes practices can be a mirage. One, because, everybody's in shorts and whatever, but in preseason games, because preseason games tend to reward quarterbacks that scramble and run around and make a play and look cool. And maybe there's something there, but like the thing that NFL coaches want in training camp and preseason games is running the offense to a T. So like, I think, how does JJ McCarthy have command of the offense? Does it look like he's lining everybody up in the right spots? Does it look like he knows what's going on with protections? Does it, you know what I mean? Because Kirk Cousins had learned like a new offense every year. So he was able to pick up on this pretty quickly, but he was also like a 10-year veteran and somebody who had worked with O'Connell before. And even still, it took him a whole year to really master the offense. And I just think that, like you guys talked about, it's going to be a growing curve, which is why him sitting is good. JJ McCarthy talked about in the spring, what are you going to do over your summer? He said, I'm going to hang around in town. And he's like, I'm going to be in the facility as much as possible, trying to soak up this playbook and trying to figure stuff out. If he struggles with the playbook, that's going to be concerning that he can't pick it up. Eventually he'll get it. They'll figure something out. But if Josh Dobbs can do it in a week, I think they can spread it out for somebody over the course of a season. But
Josh Dobbs is a rocket scientist, though. Let's be honest.
That's also true. It's weird. The more they let him know about the playbook, the worse he did. So I don't know how much that helped either. But
too much information.
The other sensory overload. The thing with JJ McCarthy too is just how to, his tendency in college was to rifle passes in there because he had to, there was never any, he didn't need to have touch. He could just rocket passes in there because his receivers were open all the time. Now, how's it going to be when he's got to get tight window throws are one thing. He can rocket a ball in there, but what happens when you need to kind of lift the ball over the head of the linebacker? What happens when you need to get that corner route along the sideline to Jefferson? I know Jefferson and Addison will make up for a little bit, and so will Hawkinson when he gets healthy, but there's going to need to be a little bit of that. So those are kind of the things, if I'm paying attention to things in training camp, how does McCarthy handle the offense? And just, this is stupid, but for the quarterback, how does the ball look coming out of his hand? Those are going to be, believe it or not, those are two big things a quarterback needs to have.
And it's going to be weird because for the most part, we're not going to ever see it, right? Like, it's just, you don't sign Sam Darnold to, a better way to say this is you sign Sam Darnold to be the guy for a year. That's why Sam Darnold, because otherwise you bring in, McLeod Bethel Johnson or Thompson or whatever that guy's name. You know what I mean? You bring in somebody else because JJ is just going to be the guy you're going to throw him the car keys. But that's not, you brought in Darnold. So it's going to be hard because we're just not going to see what growth there is from him. If there is, you're just going to have to read tea leaves in reports and understand what is fluff and what isn't fluff.
Right. So, all right, everybody got their Vikings takes out of the way. We all good? Everybody feel confident this team's going to win the Super Bowl this year?
Yeah, give me a month. I'll change my opinion.
Give me one bad practice.
Yeah, one bad practice.
You're pointing at the Purple Pride?
That's from 98, in case anyone's wondering.
Yeah, they won the Super Bowl that year, didn't they?
Yeah, in my mind, they did.
See, in my mind, they won the Super Bowl.
It happened to me like the 97 men's Gopher basketball team.
In my mind, the 09 Vikings won the Super Bowl.
The late 90s weren't great.
This has been the Morning Sports Desk for Wednesday, July 24th.
The Morning Sports Desk, available on demand on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and WadenaRadio.com.